Thank you. You may be seated. Good afternoon. I want to start with acknowledging the lands upon which we gather. We honor our indigenous lands, and what I wanted to do was to figure out how and the best way as the court to be able to bring that acknowledgement and to be able to make it a part of today's presentation. So I looked at a couple of different things, and I looked at both our Bremerton High School, Olympic College, all of our educational institutions to see how they had their land acknowledgements. And I want it to be earnestly felt that I share the commitment of honoring our Native communities and making that a part of our education and making that a part of our courts. So I'm going to read the following acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is within the ancestral territories of the Squab people of Clearwater, the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, basket weavers, the Squabs live in harmony with the land waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Squabs live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. It is my honor to stand before you as the presiding judge of Bremerton Municipal Court. As we mark just a little bit over my 1-year anniversary, I felt that it was important to be able to bring information to our community, because otherwise our community doesn't know what happens in our courts. So first, I'll acknowledge that it's very significant that I'm here today. This is Black History Month. I want to acknowledge the leaders that have come before me: Al and Hazel Coven, Alice and Loxie Eakins, the Walkers, Marty Crutcher, Ted Spearman. My fellow veterans and active duty members, leaders, elected officials, the NAACP president, retired Mayor Patty Lent, family and friends, and our entire Bremerton community, whether you're here in person or you're on and going to be able to watch on BCAT or the live stream that's being provided today. Thank you. The State of the Court Address is my opportunity to provide the community that elected me with how far we have come in the last year. It is an opportunity to communicate my continued vision since my election and what I've accomplished the last 12 months and what we have accomplished, where we're going. Additionally, it's a way to see how the courts are a crucial part of educating the public on the independence of the judiciary. Court rules govern and specify under General Rule 29 how our authority comes. Bremerton Municipal Court is a court of limited jurisdiction, meaning misdemeanor and gross misdemeanors. Also traffic infractions. But what a lot of people don't know is we deal with civil matters in a different kind of way than Superior Court. in district court now because of rule changes. We used to do protection orders. We still modify no contact orders, and those motions are brought by victims. GR 29 recognizes that the presiding judge as the official spokesperson for the court. As the elected judge, I am the presiding judge. The court has one part-time commissioner, Jennifer Cruz. She replaces Shane Seaman, who was elected to district court. The slides in the presentation are going to show you some of the staff. And next slide. So I'm also introducing you to our court administrator, Jennifer Johnson, who comes with, I'm going to say 30 plus years of experience. Coming to us from Des Moines as the court administrator there, and previously being elected as the court administrator of the year in 2019. And up on the screen is Jennifer Cruz, our new court commissioner and presiding. She's also worked as a pro tem for the court. So you see a picture there. I want to send a gracious thank you to Skookum. Skookum hosted us for our first retreat as a staff, and being able to be in an environment that was welcoming and being able to allow staff and some training to take place. We were able to do that at the Skookum facility. So that's the picture that is there on the slide. And so I spoke of the annual retreat and weekly leadership meetings and team lunches. It's important for me and our community that the workplace reflects our community and diversity and equity and their talents and the years of experience that they bring. We have bilingual staff. And we want to continue with that trend as a part of the city, but maintaining that we are independent as the judicial branch. So combined experience is about 70 plus years of experience in working in the courts around the state of Washington. So on the next slide, you will see Serena, Christina, Stephen, Brian, and Carissa. And that makes up our staff currently. We also have a contracted security guard. And one of the things I will highlight is the importance of safety and security around the courthouse. The therapeutic court coordinator, Stephen here, he's in the back, can stand up. Is a newly created position, and that position was created through grant funds, which is a part of our therapeutic court program. And so there's just some pictures of around the office, and you can go to the next slide. And that's showing our courts. While we're no longer in that thought of the pandemic, there's been some relaxation as to the mask mandates, but the medical professions, as well as our health departments, advise us to make sure that we err on the side of caution when we're in certain public settings and in large crowds. And if you're feeling ill, to make sure you have a mask, stay home. So we're still monitoring that, but we have moved into where we are fully functioning with trials. Previously, there had been in place a mandate for jurors to be vaccinated. Over the last year, that has not been the case. We did end our mask policy for the courthouse as far as mandatory was December 31st. We have continued to have hybrid hearings. The remote hearings access for our courthouse to even be able to come into the courthouse and appear via Zoom if you're feeling ill or not, being able to have that access through your own means, but also in how we have our hearings for those that are in custody. Zoom has been a vital part of the court hearings process, and not only for our courts, for superior courts as well as district court. And I do want to acknowledge Judge Hemstreet, who's here from Superior Court. So over the last year, from about March through November, the court has successfully applied for and received grant funds. Those grant funds, and the most recent, includes the 0.1% from the county. And we're the only municipal court that has received the 0.1% for establishing a therapeutic court and a community court program. State grants include also therapeutic court funding, community counselors funding, an AVN media grant, because we have not had updates to the courthouse AV media system in 12 years, 13 years? Oh, 14 years. But this grant will allow for us to bring technology that needs to happen, and we need the technology to be able to function at a level that the courts are now requiring to continue the access to justice, to allow for the remote hearings. We are a community of retired military government individuals that come in on contract, that live in Alaska, that may get a ticket here or may get into trouble here, and to be able to allow for them to participate fully in the court proceedings, we need to have that technology. Backlog funds, everyone is somewhat familiar with the Blake decision. Blake funds for reimbursing those individuals who successfully vacate their convictions, and they've paid those fees for reimbursing. So the state has provided funding so that the city isn't bearing that burden and the cost and trying to figure out, okay, how are you gonna now reimburse those individuals, as well as interpreter funds. So over the last year, because of technology, we've been able to use virtual clerks, and that brings us to O-courts. We are a court that uses O-courts, and those virtual court clerks that are assisting also use O-courts. And because of this program that we have been able to implement, that allows for judges who are single court judges like myself, for us to be able to support one another. That technology will work even better once we get the upgrades. So in addition to Laserfish, because what you have is computer systems that are 10 years old. We get the refurbished of the refurbished of the refurbished. And if you're running all of this new technology on those systems, uh, they crash. We are in hearings and things are stalled. I also want to acknowledge in the room is Mr. Murphy, one of our public defenders, and working with the jail over the last year and being able to use courts in the jail. That is something that technology has moved us forward with. That software is very vital to our day-to-day functions, especially in a day and age where the appearance in a hybrid fashion is needed for access to justice. We have a new AV media cart with the most up-to-date equipment, and there is a thank you to our IT department for providing the support in getting that AV cart up and running. We have been able to use that AV cart in our trial proceedings. We've had, I think this last week was our maybe 5th trial, and the AV media cart allows for the prosecutor and the defense to be able to share evidence, and we actually also had an expert witness appear from across the country via Zoom and utilizing that AV cart. So overall, when it comes to technology, we still have a long way to go, but I'm hoping that by this time next year, my report will be that the courthouse has now, both courtrooms have now been fully equipped and functioning, and we are anticipating that to be happening. So, next clock. Next slide. I mentioned funding through grant funds and establishing the Bremerton Municipal Community Court, which is our therapeutic court. That program was successful in starting January of this year. We have our first participant in that program, and we're real excited because healing the community by healing the individual is so key. Our therapeutic court addresses mental health and substance abuse. Prior to the start date of January 1st, we had several meetings, several planning. I had Stephen stand up as the therapeutic court coordinator and even establishing a new job description. I'm thankful to West Sound Treatment Center, Kitsap Mental Health, Agape, Peninsula Community Services Clinic, PCSH, for supporting our program and continuing to provide the support that's needed to make this successful, as well as transportation and support through Gather Together, Grow Together, and the support from retired Judge Roof in meeting with me, and him being the first judge to establish a drug court program in Kitsap County, and having been a public defender during that time. It was near and dear to my heart to make sure I had a conversation with him, went over my ideas and thoughts, and wanted to make sure we were on the right path. But I want to come back full circle to Bremerton Municipal Court. Is the only full-time municipal court in our county. We have Bainbridge Island, we have Port Orchard, we have Poulsbo. They are all part-time courts. Our caseload in Bremerton is very similar to just the numbers are very high. Over the last year, total number of filings were 22,893. That's up from years past. In 2019 was the highest year, but we haven't had any increase in staffing. So our goal is to this year discuss increasing in staffing. People think about the therapeutic courts, and some say, well, is this just another program to let people out of jail and to continue to give them a pass? The community court, our therapeutic court program, is about restorative justice, accountability, and giving them the resources and tool to treat the whole person. If we can treat the whole person, we can be successful in making our community safe and making that revolving door that is continued because they may have went to treatment for substance abuse, but they didn't get the medication that they needed for their mental health. So now we have tools in place to make sure that they get the medication for the mental health and they get the treatment for the substance abuse. And they don't have to have both, but the majority of what we see is that it is a combined issue. And with the pandemic, we're seeing so many more mental health issues, depression, all of those things that are coming forth that are issues for our community. Next slide, please. So this goes in, again, to what we're wanting to address: public safety and reducing incarceration because of the cost that it puts on our system for an individual who has mental health issues and the jail does not have the proper resources to treat them. The jail is not a treatment agency. There's medical issues that many individuals have that the jail isn't properly equipped to address. Connecting them in a way where they bring themselves in, we screen them. It requires for them to commit to the program. So it isn't something that's forced. The rules are gone over with them. They make an application, and then it's staffed. So the commitment has to come from that individual because of the level of accountability, but not only are they being accountable, we as the court and the justice system are being accountable too, to providing them those tools that they need to be successful. As a component to our therapeutic court, community court program, we will be holding quarterly resource fairs. At those resource fairs, we will have Bremerton Housing Authority, Kitsap Community Resources, the state, for all of those things that we say, go out and do this, and they're going, I'm homeless, how do you expect me to be able to go do this, and where do I go, and who do I talk to? We're bringing that all into one room. And that will be for any defendants, but mainly our therapeutic court participants. Again, treating the whole individual. Next slide, please. So some fun things. Over the last year, we have held our youth and law forums. Again, our public defender's office has supported that, and other partners that have participated in the 3 that we held during the 2022 year includes our Bremerton Police Department, our Washington State Patrol, the Port Orchard Police Chief, and the DuPont Police Chief, as well as the Kitsap Public Health Department. All of those were participants in this program, and other volunteers and attorney friends from around the state role-playing in the role of public defender and prosecutor. The key thing is this is an opportunity for them to ask questions, to learn about the law, to have accountability, and to empower the youth so that their first encounter with the justice system isn't one where they're being faced with a criminal charge, where they're being faced with driving while license suspended, or they did something. Being able to interact with law enforcement in a positive setting has been our goal. And we're going to be bringing that in partnership hopefully with the Minority and Justice Commission and some other state organizations, to our county as a county event. And when it's brought at that level, it will be supporting not only our youth getting educated, but our adults, families, the parents, the grandparents that care for the children. Again, we don't want individuals to fear and to respond in fear. If law enforcement is a career that you're interested in, this is a way to be able to say, when I was a young kid, I interacted with law enforcement, and this is something that I have a goal. And the Washington State Patrol, talking about the different positions, their K-9 unit, all of that has been what has been a part of our last 3. Our next one coming up is on March 3rd. We have been able to interact with Catalyst schools, Central Kitsap schools, North Kitsap schools, some students from OC. So, and I'm missing another school, Olympic College, and I think PLU. So local colleges and students from the 7th grade, 8th grade, all the way through high school and college. Next slide, please. And community connections. I mentioned some of the partnerships that we have through relationships that we've built over the year in preparing for our therapeutic courts. But this gives kind of I just participated in Legislative Day down in Olympia with our district and municipal courts Judges Association, and talking about what has been some key issues around rules that have been created in legislation that presents problems to some of the courts, but also thanking them for the continued funding that we're looking for the therapeutic court programs for a small community and first-time recipients of the funding. The other pictures are kind of a little bit of one of the interactions at one of our youth and law forums. The key in understanding, we've done court security training, which is the first time I mentioned we have one contracted security officer. And we have 2 courtrooms, a lot of foot traffic, and our public defender's office is also located in the same building. The need for additional security is key, and we will be addressing that. But having personal safety security training that we just held, and we opened it up to not only the court staff, but the prosecutor's office, the defense office, and anyone who wanted to attend. That is also key, is being able to be aware of the surroundings and what to do in case of an emergency. There's been different cases where we've seen security issues at courthouses. We are located right downtown, and there is a lot of movement of our homeless population, and it's important for the staff and those that come in for our jury trials, the jurors, to feel safe. And then there's also other educational opportunities that are nationwide, judges in the courtroom, moot court, things that happen outside of the court that I have participated in and will continue to participate in over the next year. Next slide, please. So, the therapeutic court and the programs that I've mentioned is a new way of thinking about justice. It's a new way of challenging what has been the quote-unquote norms, and this is how we've always done it. Accessing tools and resources that are out there to make things more accessible includes electronic home monitoring, utilizing that more. And that's in pretrial, so before there's a conviction, as well as when there is a conviction. Because again, the court is concerned with the safety of the community. And when there's issues that arise, the extra monitoring is necessary. And that also is something that can be used in conjunction as a TAD unit for alcohol monitoring. So a lot of times we see GPS monitoring when we are dealing with situations of domestic violence, and then the TAD unit when we're dealing with DUIs. And that can be also looked at in ignition interlock device requirements. Next slide, please. And we also want to stay ahead of the game and the curve. There's continuing changes that, as a court, we have to be ready to adopt the change. We saw this with the pandemic. The court's shutting down, having to immediately adjust and saying, how are we going to have these hearings? How are we going to do these things? So the flexibility and being able to adjust when necessary is something that now we see as the judicial branch is necessary. Continuing to expand our therapeutic court program, jail alternatives, justice initiatives, of course, the community resource fair I mentioned, and I have their night court, traffic court, infractions. There is a possible program that we may be able to participate in that would roll a potential licensing court. And we also want to be sensitive and aware that there are individuals that want to attend court or want to deal with the red light tickets and the traffic tickets, and they can't do that because they're at work during the court hours. So I think you've seen on TV that they brought back the night court. So we are considering night court, night traffic court once a month as an alternative, as something to offer our community as a whole. And then also partnering in with other courts around the state on the licensing and relicensing court that may be established. The first meeting on that is going to be in March, and I will be a part of that. And I'll have more information for you on that next year. So I also want to highlight that over the last year, as a new judge, I attended National Judicial College in Reno, Nevada. I also am going to be a presenter for the DC MJA new pro tem training that's coming up. And then we have the spring conference, or we had the fall conference that I attended in September, and then we have the spring conference coming up this year, and it's the first time. The fall conference was still virtual. This spring conference that's going to be in Spokane in June is the first time that we're gathering together as judges around the state since the pandemic. So this is a very key training to be a part of. And just as we as attorneys are required to continue to have CLEs as judges, we're required to have CJEs. Next slide, please. That's it. Okay, so I meant to add a thank you slide, so I'll thank you now. I want to just highlight a couple of other things, and that is we created a interpreter calendar where we have an interpreter calendar twice a month where we have 95% participation on that calendar. The languages that we have seen through our court is Spanish, Hmong, Russian, Chuukese, and I also want to say maybe Tugala. But those are the languages that we have seen on a regular basis. We have discontinued use of the language line because there's been a lot of issues around their being able to hear, and the connections on the language line through the phone has not been the best in the past. So we do still utilize our interpreters via Zoom, and we also utilize, and on our interpreter calendars, have them in person. And this allows for not only the defendants, but the attorneys to be able to meet, go over paperwork, and have everything interpreted at those calendars. We recently worked with our executive branch on the independence of the public defender services, and that was GR 42. And we're continuing to offer O-Courts training to our public defenders, our prosecutor's office, ongoing with trainings, and anyone who's interested in getting that, as well as our pro tem judges on a regular basis. We're doing cross-training with our clerical staff to make sure that if someone is out, that they're able to fill in and the work doesn't pile up. So again, thank you to West Sound Treatment Center, Agape, Kitsap Mental Health, PCSHS, all of the individuals there, as well as to all of you for being here today, and to our community that entrusted me for this position. Those things that I discussed and talked about and implementing in this last year, we have been working very diligently to do that. While we are the independent branch of the government, we still work with the city government, and things don't often move as fast as we would like, but they are moving. And I would like to thank the city as well. Thank you, and that'll conclude my State of the Courts address today.